The views expressed on the Jerry Cahill's CF podcast are that of Jerry Cahill and guests, and not necessarily those of the Boomer Esiason Foundation. Nothing on the Jerry Cahill's CF podcast should be considered medical advice. Such advice can only be given by a physician who is experienced with cystic fibrosis. The Boomer Esiason Foundation, Jerry Cahill and guests cannot be held responsible for any damage which may result from using the information on this podcast without the permission of your medical doctor. You're listening to the Jerry Cahill's CF podcast presented by the Boomer Esiason Foundation and jerrycahill.com.
Welcome back to another Living, Breathing, Succeeding podcast. Today we'll be talking to Nick Talbot, the first person with CF to climb and summit Mount Everest. Nick is 42 years old from London, and I'm excited that we got the opportunity to sit down and chat.
Hi, my name's Nick Talbot. I'm a 42-year-old CFer who lives in London in the UK. I was diagnosed quite late with CF. It was when I was 13. I was admitted to hospital with 3 types of pneumonia. And I'm very lucky as a CFer, not only because of the medication that I'm on, but because I have a milder version which mainly affects lungs, liver and bones. So growing up I was involved with outdoor sports, so mountain biking, skiing, hiking, that sort of thing. In fact, after I was diagnosed with CF and almost died of pneumonia, my parents' reaction was actually to buy me a mountain bike a couple of months later. I guess they always protected us from the knowledge of what CF could be, at least initially. So they got told I had 3 to 5 years to live, which is something I only actually found out a year or 2 ago. But living in the countryside, the only thing you could really do was outdoor sports. So I started mountain climbing when I was a kid because that's what my parents dragged us out to do, and then slowly over time I enjoyed it more and more, and so it's something I continued as an adult, and I just carried on mountain climbing because it's a way of pushing my limits, it's a way of staying healthy. It gives you a goal and an objective as opposed to just going out and doing exercise on a daily basis. When you're on the mountain, staying compliant with CF medication and approach can be quite difficult. If you were on something like nebulizers, you wouldn't take those onto the mountain. You wouldn't go onto the mountain, so you have to be clear of infection when you're actually going on there. And then it's a case of what would you normally do. So if it's a case of physio and things like that, you can do that on the mountain. Nutrition and coughing are actually quite difficult things because it's hard to take in enough calories. That's been easier since I've been on ivacaftor, which helps my body absorb more calories, but it used to be really, really tough. I used to come back and I used to be literally skin and bones. I actually had to develop my own coughing techniques in the mountains. When I'm at normal altitude, I'll actually cough fairly intensively if I've got an infection to try and get things up. It's a lot better now under my current medication, but I used to cough a lot to clear my lungs. I couldn't do that on the mountain because I just found with the dry air, trying to breathe, the combination of that and hard coughing would just, it stressed the lungs too much. I just started to come up with a more gentle coughing technique which would move the mucus up through my lungs and out. And I found that worked, and I didn't have a repeat of the ripped muscle, which I wouldn't recommend to anyone. The hardest mountain that I've climbed is Everest. For many reasons, but partly because it almost killed me with some of the natural disasters, and partly because of the sheer intensity of training that you have to do. But I'd learnt a lot from other mountains and how to develop coping techniques from a CF point of view, which helped me climb Everest. To climb physically from base camp to the top will take 5 to 7 days, but it's much harder than that because it takes 2 months to actually prepare for it because of all the intensity of preparation of your body as it acclimatizes. So the last mountain that I climbed was a mountain called Denali, which is the highest one in North America, and it's in Alaska. Denali is quite a tough mountain, both because of the weather conditions and also because of the physicality of carrying the stuff. So you're carrying 50 kilos on your back and on this sled to keep you going for 3 weeks. 50 kilos is probably 120 pounds. We were lucky with the weather and we just made it to the top within the window that we had. Yeah, I remember all sorts of things. I remember, bear in mind, so Everest took me 3 attempts. But I remember getting to the top with a Sherpa friend, and it was just the 2 of us up there. So we had 15 minutes on top of the world, looking down at all these mountains you're normally looking up at. And I felt a huge range of emotions. I felt really happy, privileged, by anyone's standards to be up there. I felt incredibly beautiful. I also felt incredibly relieved, I thought at one point that day, 2 points that day, I thought that we were going to turn around, and I wasn't sure if I'd have enough muscle left to get back up in another attempt. I motivate myself to do regular exercise because it does help me feel good. So even though I might dislike it when I'm doing it because I'm pushing myself so hard, I do feel good literally 30 seconds after I stop. It helps with my general well-being, it helps me feel better mentally, and so I just find I get huge benefits from that. But I think it's pushing whatever limits you have, and if your limit is, you normally walk down the street, okay, just try and push that a bit further. Walk down that street twice or go twice as far. Just push, think about what your dreams are in life and try and figure out a way of achieving them. And because there's nothing, for me in life, what you don't want to do is end your life with regret. And I've got no qualms about trying something and failing at it, because at least I figure, well, I've tried it and that worked, or it didn't work. But at least I know from that, and I don't beat myself up about the fact that if I can't do something. But I think it's just important to try and figure out what you want and try and go for it. Try and think differently about life. I just encourage you to dream whatever it is and try and reach for that. Try and figure out a way to get to that and make the most of your life.